what's up, fam? Welcome back to the Two Goats Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. Steph, what's up? Welcome. Glad to be back. I was gonna say welcome
Yeah.
back, but I guess welcome back to me, huh?
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's been a minute, but glad to be back. I was missing this show.
Yep, same. Well, it's a bye week, so at least the pretty much the 3 weeks that we missed were the three losses. I remember the last show that we did, and the last show I did at all before all this craziness happened was a show where, remember, I was yelling at the guy in the chat because he kept putting 5-1, 5-1. And I told him, well, once we win this week and we're 6-0, make sure you come back. Don't be hiding.
Oh
And then I
no.
haven't been back since. So
He thought you were
um
you were hiding probably.
yeah, probably. So things have changed a lot since the last that we've talked. Like I just mentioned, we were undefeated the last time we talked, and we had taken 3 straight losses since then. Luckily, the bye week this week, so we don't have to worry about losing. So that's always a good thing. But kind of just talk to me, like, how are you feeling? Like I said, it's the bye week. It's kind of for the players, they get to reset, rest their bodies, clear their mentals, figure out what the fuck they're doing. And I think as us as fans, content creators, like, we got to do the same, right? Especially coming off 3 losses, like, it can get a bit, like, I can imagine. At least I got to like deal with it on my own, like I wasn't putting out content the last 3 weeks, so I didn't really have to deal with it, like I just got to cry in my own little corner of the world. But so here we are. It's not the end of the world, right? Like, we talked about how we wanted, the team did, the fans did, we did, about how they wanted to start off fast, so we could get hopefully home field advantage, all this stuff. Well, they started off fast and something else happened, like, so there's like no room for error now. Like, they got to be on the top of their game. But tell me how you're feeling, like, how are you feeling after all this?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Like, I think the bye week, this is a chance to kind of reset, and I'm kind of looking at it like I'm kind of waiting for after the bye week for the team to tell me who they are, because I think we've gotten two very different views of this team so far in both in consecutive weeks, like 5 in a row winning and looking dominant, and then 3 in a row looking like the complete, well, I don't want to say complete opposite, but just
Pretty close.
disappointing, right? Pretty close, yeah. So yeah, I'm just kind of waiting to see what team shows up next week, and gonna base my opinions on then. But obviously, like, these last 3 games have been very disappointing, from not just the standpoint of them starting so hot and then falling to that, because I think that's the thing, right? Like, I've talked to a lot of people about this now, and it's like, I think it's just the way it happened that is disappointing, because they started so hot and now they're 5-3. Had we said, after this 8-game stretch at the bye week, they'd be 5-3 at the beginning of the season, I think we'd be like, I'm cool
Okay.
with that. But I don't think we were expecting it to be in this fashion, right? So now it looks like everything's kind of spiraling. The ship is sinking a little bit. And so that's why we're like panicking, because we're like, okay, is this like how things are going to be now? But I think John, Kyle, they've shared the same sentiment that, the solutions in the building. All these guys, largely the same group from last year's team, all these guys have been able to look good before and together, right? So I think I have faith that they'll be able to turn it around at some point. They kind of do this every year, quite honestly. Like, yeah, they got off to the hot start, but a lot of the time, like, they do start kind of slow, sluggish. They get into these slumps, and then they kind of find a way to get it back together. So they need to start doing that, right? Like, right after the buys, when they need to start getting it together, because now, like, you've wasted a bunch of games that you could have been in contention for that number 1 seed. But looking at the second half of the season, earlier on my show with Rob, I said they would finish 11-6, I believe. So that's not terrible, right? That's a
Right.
playoff team, right? So yeah, I'm still optimistic about the team overall.
Yeah. What's up, chat? I see you guys. Happy Well, Bebop says happy Friday. He's trying to throw me off. He's trying to throw me off there. Good thing Miss Debbie right above it says happy Thursday. So she's there to keep me on track. So happy Thursday, chat. I see y'all. Appreciate you guys all coming through. Anybody that might be new, if you're watching, on my stream, 49 Faithful Lee, or vice versa, if you're watching on Steph 49K, please make sure that you subscribe to both channels. And like both videos as well. We greatly appreciate it. Steph, everybody's looking for, I think it's like the blame game, right? Like we got something happened and we gotta blame somebody, right? Like we can't just say, oh well, like all this might have just happened, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. No, we gotta find somebody to blame. It's somebody's fault. It seems Wilkes has got the biggest part of the blame. The defense has then got the next part of the blame, and kind of goes down from there. Where, I know that you watched the tape. I know that you've obviously watched the film from, both these losses. After doing that and, looking at everything, where are you at with it? Like we heard Shanahan come out and say, it's everybody. It's the coaches, it's the players, it's offense, it's defense. Obviously, we talked about and joked when we did our score predictions on the show for the first 5 weeks, saying that it was pretty much a gimme that we're going to, guess that the 49ers will score over 30 points, right? And yet they haven't done that the last 3 weeks either. So I don't think that's a Wilkes problem. I don't think the defense is causing that issue. I don't think that Wilkes is making our quarterback throw interceptions, so after watching the film, where are you at in the blame game?
I mean, I'm not really blaming one specific thing, really. I think there's a lot of things going on both sides of the ball. At the end of the day, like I think in the trenches on both sides of the ball is kind of where the 49ers are lacking. Like obviously, the pass rush not getting home is what's causing the secondary to look like they are and giving up all these yards and making all these quarterbacks look great. And then on the other end, you have the run game that hasn't been so successful these last few weeks. A lot of that does have to do with some of the injuries, but still no excuses because, like, as a coach, you would think Kyle would make some adjustments off of that. Now, like, and this is where I think, after the bye, things should be a little bit better. I mean, I think for both sides, just given that you should be having Trent back. Debo on K Adams this morning said that, he's ready to go. So, you should have those guys back. That should help the run game, which should help Brock and what we're now seeing as like these turnovers and things like that, because offense should be more complementary after the bye week with those guys now being healthy. Now on the defense, you just added Chase Young, and you hope that during this bye week, Steve Wilkes is going to get back to the drawing board and figure out what's wrong. One guy alone, as we've seen, is not going to be the solution of all their problems, right? But you hope with that, along with, Wilkes making some changes, some adjustments here and there. And I'm sure Kyle is looking over his shoulder or doing it with him, like they're probably doing all this together. I think I feel confident they should be able to figure something out. And the defense should also look better, particularly the defensive line.
Yeah, I hope Trent coming back and Debo, something has to help this run game. It just sucks now that we're losing Banks at the same time we're getting Trent back. And then, like, I don't know, like I've been feeling some type of way that Shanahan just keeps sending Elijah Mitchell out there and he's running into a fucking brick wall basically. And you have capable running backs. Like, you drafted these young guys that are just sitting on the bench, like Mason's just sitting there rotting away. TDP can't even get active. It's like, and you keep running the guy out there that's always hurt, that's not doing anything, and I obviously CMC is not doing much in the run game these last couple of weeks either, but try something different, like, I don't know what it is. Like Kyle, and he like gets these players like rise up the ranks in Kyle Love points or whatever, and it's just like, it's so hard to get him out of there. It's like, it's like frustrating because it's like you draft these players. It's not like you're just, picking up Joe Schmo off the couch. Like you're going out drafting these guys and then basically telling them, well, you're good enough for us to draft, but you're not good enough to play. Like I don't know. It's just the frustrating thing with Kyle and his doghouse and all his weird shit with young players and
Yeah, I do think that's kind of what we're seeing right now, because I don't think it's for lack of talent with Jordan Mason or even Ronnie Bell, like, has kind of disappeared the
yeah.
last few weeks. Definitely not for lack of talent. I think it's definitely Kyle related, because and I have to imagine it's something they're doing without the ball in their hands, whether it be blocking, for Jordan Mason, maybe it could be pass protection, maybe it could be not knowing all of the plays, or just having, miscues here and there. That will piss him off to no end,
Mm-hmm.
right? Execution, even when you don't have the ball in your hands. So that's what I am thinking it is right now, and why we're not seeing those guys. That being said, like, I think we've seen enough of Elijah Mitchell at this point in time to, not feel great about him when he's out there, right? So clearly not
I mean,
helping the
and it
situation.
sucks. Yeah, it sucks because he had been so great when he was healthy, the last little bit that he had been healthy. Like he pretty much carried this team, the season that he was healthy. And it's just like ever since, like I don't know if it's the injuries now that have finally caught up with him, or it's just he's not 100%, or I don't know. But something needs to switch up. And then
Yeah.
like you talked about Ronnie Bell, it's like with Debo out, I thought for sure we'd see more Ronnie Bell and at least more Ray Ray. And it's like we see a couple plays with Ray Ray and it's like that's it. Like when Kyle, when we first got Ray Ray, it's like Kyle kept saying, "Oh, we see him as more than just a returner." That's all he kept saying. I love him as a wide receiver. He's going to fit perfect into this offense. And pretty much we've seen when he's gotten the opportunity, the little times that he has before when Debo was out, he made the best of it, right? It's not like he got in there and sucked. The first game that this year that Debo actually got hurt and went out, obviously when you're throwing Ray Ray into there, he wasn't in the game plan originally, right? Like he didn't
Yeah.
practice for that role all week long. So that was kind of crazy. But the other times where we've actually got to see him like take all the reps, that week in practice and whatnot, like he's done well. So like I don't see like why we're just not giving these guys opportunities, like I'm the biggest Brandon Ayuk fan that you could freaking find, but it's like you can't just go to him on every single play. Like we have Kittle in there blocking because obviously the O-line's what it is. So we have basically one wide receiver when Debo's out that they know that you're going to go to on every freaking throw. It's like I just feel like Kyle's not doing enough to help. Like I don't know what his deal is. And it just like it seemed like he wanted himself to then place the blame on Wilkes too, and it's just like I know that Wilkes has to have some blame. Obviously, we know that play call before halftime that, the other team scored a
Yeah.
touchdown on. Everybody would have been talking about he was a genius had Ward made that interception and ran it back for a pick six.
I mean, I
You
don't know about genius, but we just wouldn't have minded it. Like, no one would have batted an eye to
Yeah,
it,
it would never got brought up. Nobody would ever
despite
talk how
it
bad the
being
call
very
was.
despite it being very risky and ill-advised at that point in the game. Um, but you just, yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's both sides to blame for sure for different things. It's not just Wilkes. It isn't just Kyle either.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think when both of those things are not going right, like, you're gonna get the results we've been seeing these last few weeks, right? And so it's just kind of unfortunate that some of the struggles on both sides of the ball have like overlapped, and I think that's why we're seeing the team struggle. But I think I could see a scenario in which, like, after the bye, the offense gets back on track, and maybe the defense still has some of the same struggles, but I could see, as long as the offense is okay, they're still in contention to win these games. Like, if you these games
Mm-hmm.
have been close, like, I know the last one against the Bengals, like, the final score ended up being, kind of big. It was like 31-17, but there was a point in the game in which it was a one possession game. Several drives that they had a chance to tie it up, right? And they just
Right.
couldn't for some of the reasons we're talking about now. But I just think like even if one side of the ball gets fixed, it should go a long way. And coming out of this bye, though, frankly, like I'm expecting both sides to be better than they have been these last few weeks.
Yeah, same. Um, let's talk about obviously the big move the 49ers made this week before trade deadline. Went out and almost at the last freaking what, like the last hour or so before the damn
Yeah, I was gonna say an hour
before
before.
the deadline was up. They trade for Chase Young from Washington Commanders for a third round pick. And at first it came out that it was the 49ers actual third round pick, but then it started coming out that it's actually a comp pick. So I mean, we'll see, but it looks like it's a comp pick, which is pretty
Yeah.
crazy. Obviously it's like a rental, with Chase Young. He's not under contract after this season. So you're giving up a third round pick for that. But if the 49ers either sign him, if they can figure out a way to pull some magic out of the hat and make that happen, get him on an extension, okay, awesome. But if not, and he goes somewhere next season and signs a contract, well, the 49ers are getting back at probably a third round comp pick back for him. So you're pretty much getting him for free, for the rest of the
Yeah.
season. Hopefully, if he plays and it works out and him and Nick Bosa together again in love can make it work, great. Hopefully they can make the money work and keep him here. But either way, I think that's a hell of a deal. Like somehow John Lynch keeps making these deals that are just like, like, wow, like how did you do that? But I mean, he talked about how he's friends, right? Like he has a
Yeah.
relationship
I
with them
mean,
over
that goes a long
there. And
way.
yeah, so obviously that helps because I was thinking last week, I was telling my wife too, she don't know too much like about like the ins and outs of it, but I still tell her because who else am I going to tell, right? So I was talking to her about how if it was up to Kyle, a lot of these teams probably wouldn't even be trying to make deals with Kyle because he's either coached there and the relationship went some way, or he's just has this attitude that he has, the Kyle attitude. But it's like having John Lynch, he's so friendly with everybody. He has
Yeah.
these good relationships with all these people, and it makes such a difference to have somebody like that.
Yeah,
So,
I think oh no, I was just gonna say, Lynch is a smart guy, and
mhm,
his network goes beyond just what he's built as a GM. Like it helps that he was a former player because a lot of former players are now in this
mhm,
space or like, in management or whatever it may be, coaching. And then you're also seeing it from his time as, doing broadcast stuff. Like, I'm sure he gained some connections there as well. And then now, and you mentioned like he has a lot of there's been a lot of uh GM positions or just like people in other orgs now that have come from the 49ers org,
mhm.
right? Like they talk about coaching tree. This is like an organizational tree that
Yeah.
we got going on now. And so there he has a lot of friends all over the NFL and in high places, right? So I think it definitely comes in handy at these times, and that's why he's able to get such great deals because he's getting the homie discount at this point.
Mhm. Yeah. Where I mean, a lot of people were hoping that we made a trade for. I know a lot of people wanted a cornerback, some people wanted O-line help. Um, but again, they added more assets to the D line. Like there's so many draft picks and so much money tied into this defensive line that up until this point, through 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, haven't done nothing. Not nothing, but compared to what we're expecting
Not
from them,
enough. Yeah, not
compared to
enough.
what the money they're getting paid, and it's just like something's been off. Obviously Nick Bosa, everybody wants to bring up, oh, he's getting pressures, but like I brought up on the show yesterday, yeah, he's getting a pressure, but the quarterback's still getting out and pretty much 95% of the time making a play. They're scrambling out, they're running, they're making a throw on the run, and they're completing the pass because we talked about what the back end's looking like, right? It's like, at least if you were getting a sack, okay, you're getting a sack, the play's dead, that's
Yeah.
great. It's like you're making these scrambling quarterbacks they're either running or they're, throwing on the run and completing plays. So I don't know, kind of talk to us what you've seen, just out of Nick Bosa, and then um, talk to me about how you're feeling, about Chase Young. How you think that this is going to, help Nick Bosa and obviously the rest of the D line. And then in return, that's obviously going to, help the back end, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Nick Bosa goes, I think it's a combination of things, right? And it could be a greater symptom of just like what the defensive line in general has kind of been struggling through and whatever they're doing differently from past seasons. But I also think there's some weird plays that we've seen where he's close and he's in position, but he either can't like wrap up. Like there was the one play this past weekend where it looked like Eric Armstead and Bosa had a chance to bring him down and they just could not get him. It was like, oh my God, like this is exactly why we're
Yeah.
pissed off. So yeah, you're seeing like these weird things that could be a symptom of a larger problem, but also it just seems like there's a lack of fundamentals like as a whole on the defensive line, or sorry, in the entire defense, where we're seeing missed tackles. It's not just Nick Bosa, but just the entire defense. But we're seeing that from him, which is also weird, right? We're seeing it from Fred even, which is also weird. Like
Yeah.
guys, we never imagined to see have these like lapses of play. So yeah, that's the thing with Bosa. I think people way smarter than me when they watch the film have said that the back is disconnected from the front. And so like this defense has always been pass rush first, defensive line first. And then that's why it's complementary and it makes the secondary look better. But with whatever they're doing differently on the defensive line now, and like I don't know, they could probably explain it better than I could, but like the way that the coverage is right now isn't complementary to what they're doing on the front end. And so that's why you're seeing, maybe Nick Bosa is getting close, but it's not a sack because someone got open really quick on the back end, right? And so you needed to be the opposite because the secondary is not built to be the backbone of this defense. And it never was built to be that way. And so if they can just get back to the defensive line, being good and being better, I think that it'll go a long way to helping the secondary out. And, well, it's a trickle down effect, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And how you feeling about Chase Young? Were you happy? What were your thoughts when you saw that come across your notifications?
Yeah, I think, what's funny is between both Montez Sweat and Chase Young, I just kind of assumed that Montez Sweat would be a little bit cheaper to be had, right? Because you look at, Montez Sweat is older, he's 27, and then Chase Young is 25 or 24 and a half. So just looking at that alone, looking at Chase Young being a former number 2 overall pick, like I felt like he would be the one that would cost more. So I was like, I think I would take Montez Sweat over Chase Young. But given that, like, the way that the compensation, worked out was pretty much the reverse of that, I feel so much better about this trade. And because the one of the things that I wasn't so sure about with Chase Young, or just made me uneasy, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way as well, is his health, right?
Yeah.
He's healthy right now, but he has dealt with some injuries. He's still, working his way back from the ACL. A lot of people say like it takes 2 years to kind of, get back. He's almost at that 2 years exactly, right? November 14th will be exactly 2 years. So I think he is regaining that, back. And when you look at the compensation again, like him being so cheap, $561,000 this year. I mean, even if he does get hurt, like I don't even think we'd be so pissed off because, it would hurt the team a little, of course, but I mean, it's low risk and very high reward, right? So this is even better value than the Randy Gregory trade in my eyes. It should help the team a ton. I think one of the things that's not even mentioned enough at this point is the fact that he can also be great as a run defender.
Yeah, I talked about that yesterday. Yep.
Yeah, they're missing that big right now. So I think he could set the edge. he can be a guy who, even when you're going up against mobile quarterbacks, could help you out,
Mhm.
right? So I think he's going to be valuable. He has a lot of burst explosiveness off of the edge too, which should help Nick Bosa, because that's kind of what they've missed post Charles Omenihu, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that should help them a long way. I'm still looking at Steve Wilkes to, figure out some other things that's going on as far as the scheme goes with the defensive line, but if he can make little tweaks here and there, and Chase Young could be the guy that he looked like he was these past few weeks and so far this season, man, watch out. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to be a crazy defensive line.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, because you just said I'm still looking at Steve Wilkes, and it's just like, what's going on with Drake Jackson? Like, all we heard all this time was how he was in there working in the off season, right? Like, he never left. He's always there working, spending time with Steve Wilkes, seeing what he wanted, doing this, doing that. We see him come out and he has 3 sacks the first game, like, yeah, okay, that they were leaked, they're this, they're that sacks, whatever. He still got 3 sacks and nobody has been able to do it since, but it's like, now, like, where is he? It's like, and then you have all these other guys that are playing on the D line, like Farrell, like, where are these guys? What the fuck are they doing? Because it's like, and even up until last week, it's like Eric Armstead, yeah, got 2 sacks, but where's he been doing? It's like, it's not like we just have scrubs across the D line. You went and you spent all this money for Hargrave. Where's he at? Like,
yeah, it's definitely like them either like not being in position, to make the play. I don't really know, and I think it goes back to things just being discombobulated and like disconnected, and because the talent's there, it's really just a scheming issue at this point. And that's why we're seeing these guys who are so good, not get to the quarterback, right? So I think that stuff will get resolved. But if it's not, then I can see some changes happening.
Do you think that Bosa's holdout has anything to do with this? Because not only we know that, yeah, we talked about he's in the best shape, he takes care of himself, yada yada yada. We talked about how, well, obviously he's not in football shape because he wasn't here, right? Well, not only all of that, but you had a defensive coordinator taking over a defense for the first time that Bosa's never worked with before. The defensive coordinators never worked with this defense, normally runs a different style defense, all this stuff. And it's just like, well, Bosa wasn't there to learn any of it. Bosa's supposed to be your star guy, right? The guy that you're paying all this money to, that wasn't there to even figure out anything that the new defensive coordinator was doing. So it's like, we hear that Bosa in his little press conferences afterwards is just like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not quite, understanding, or said something about the scheme, like he didn't quite get the scheme or something. And it's like, well, if you were there all summer, would you have it down by now? It's like, maybe you haven't got it because you only been at work for freaking 6 weeks. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I think he did admit that him not being there during OTA's camp or whatever has somewhat impacted him on the field, because he said, he's trying some things out on the field that you would probably try in training camp, right? But he's doing it in season, which, he admitted isn't ideal. I think really that's probably the only thing that has kind of impacted him more than anything. Just, if he's trying new things. I think he's back in football shape. Like, I don't think that's really
right.
an issue. Although, like, Kyle overall said the defense looked slow and tired. Looking at the Bengals tape, which, yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing is a lack of energy almost, but I think that just comes from them feeling defeated because nothing they're doing on the field is working. After a while, 3 straight games of that, you're not really going to be very motivated to keep it going. So I think that's why I think it's a great symptom of a larger problem there as well. Uh, I know we expect more out of Nick Bosa, and rightfully so. I mean, he's getting quarterback money at this point,
Mhm.
but I don't think it falls all on his shoulders
No.
either, because he's not the only guy on this defensive line underperforming based on the standards that we have of them. So, um, yeah, I mean, it definitely hurt a little bit, but I don't think it's the cause for everything that's going wrong with the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, of course not, but, like, even last season, remember Debo, like another example. He obviously came to camp and was there, off and on, but he wasn't doing anything, standing on the sidelines, BSing, whatever. And then we seen so he pretty much had like a soft holdout, I guess you could call it. And
Yeah.
then we seen the kind of season that he came back and had, and it's like not even from this team. Like we've seen this over the years, on other teams when players have holdouts, and mix that with getting the big contract. We know that some players are never even the same after they get paid. You want to say, hopefully not our guy. Oh, not our guy, but you never know how somebody's going to be, right? So, like, you're mixing that with it. And it's just like, I know a lot of rumors, a lot of whispers in the air last season was, Debo wasn't the same because he got the bag and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I really just hope because it just seems like Joey too, Joey Bosa, once he got the bag, obviously his is a lot of injuries as well, but he like I know a lot of Chargers fans and they hate him. Like they want him off of their freaking team. Like
He can
they're
go to
always
San
begging,
Francisco.
like, can you guys trade for him? Like get him out of here, And you look at his stats and stuff and it's like he hasn't done shit since he got paid basically, and it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. All I know is that this defense has looked, yeah, the first 5 weeks, we won. So it was when you're winning, it kind of quiets down all the noise, right? But the defense wasn't even looking good through the first 5 weeks, if we're being honest. We were constantly talking about how the offense was doing
Mhm.
so great, and the offense was the one carrying the team. And like even I was excited. Finally, the offense, could keep up with the defense. It's like, no, now the defense can't even keep up, and it's just like I don't know, if that's a combination, like you said, we have mostly the same players. They added pieces that were supposed to upgrade the defense, not make it worse. And the only other new thing is obviously the defensive coordinator. So that's obviously on the defensive side. What happened to the offense the last 3 weeks? Who really knows? Because I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy. You go from putting up over 30 points to what I think every week was it 17 points we put up since
Yeah, these
these last
last
three
3
weeks or
games.
something.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
crazy.
mean, yeah, I think on offense, the run has been what's impacted them the most, because like we're seeing like Brock Purdy still able to make some plays here and there. But I think also like we're seeing the offensive line struggle a little bit with
Mhm.
some things. Part of that is Trent not being there. Part of that as well as Debo not being there. Like it's crazy. It's crazy that both of those injuries happen at the same time, and
Yeah.
you're like seeing how kind of helpless the offense looks without both of those guys, because of how impactful they are to
Yeah.
the success of the run game. Like they really are. So it's unfortunate. I do still think, like, out of hope Kyle would have better adjustments, but I guess after the bye he won't really need to adjust. I doubt that you're going to see defenders sitting on the motion when Debo gets back, because they
Mhm.
respect Debo and what he brings to the table, right? So, and if they do continue to sit on the motion, like Kyle's going to have a way to make them pay. Like I was just talking
Right.
to that about that with Rob this morning. So I'm not too worried about the offense. Like I said, so yeah, it's for sure disappointing all around. And, as Technic Sheik said about Nick Bosa, like, and Debo last year, like, it's not, to me, I don't think for those guys, it's about like, oh, because I got the bag, because I got the money, like, I'm just going to relax now. I think it's because it's a distraction in the off season, and right before the season starts, even more so for Nick Bosa, I think this year than maybe Debo last year. And Debo, by the way, did have, even before that, some issues with getting into football shape even
Mhm.
before uh all of that happened
Yeah.
last year, right? So I think that's what goes on with players. It's tough to try to get in the swing of things and think you're going to be the same players before when you don't have that like prep time. Like that's
Hmm.
really key for a lot of guys, right? So I think that's what it is more so than just falling back because you're like, well, I got my money now. I don't think those guys, Debo or Bosa, are the kind of players who have that kind of mentality.
Hmm.
So I think with this rest should help both of those guys should help Bosa and having Chase Young in the building, Bosa wasn't gonna go anywhere for this bye week. He was gonna help get Chase Young acclimated, to everything. So that could help, Bosa get a little boost as well. Like, hey, like
Hmm.
I got my guy here
Yeah,
now
I hope
too.
so.
Like, well, this is gonna be crazy. So I think it'll help for morale, and then just also, Steve Wilkes should have a easier time, hopefully, calling plays for that defensive line.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, with like Brock Purdy? The last time, we talked, there were conversations out there, with the national media, with, other podcasts and every whatnot about, Brock being a top 5 quarterback. We were discussing, like what is a franchise quarterback and is Brock Purdy one, about the winning streak he had. He, hadn't thrown interceptions for how many games straight, all this talk. And then we've obviously seen, we just sat here for 30 minutes and talked about all the problems, on the defensive side, on the offensive side. And during all this, our quarterback has been struggling as well. We've seen him throw pick after pick. And I know some of that, like he's obviously at the end of the game just trying to make something happen, trying to put up points, like of course there's, a bunch of shit why all this is happening, but like kind of talk to me, what have you seen from Brock Purdy? Like how are you feeling? Like have your thoughts, how you felt about him previously changed to, how you've seen him these last couple games? Like where are you at with Brock Purdy right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely have to change some of what we thought about Brock, but we were also, if you're real about the situation, like you were also kind of waiting for that shoe to drop eventually. Like he was going to have a bad game. He was going
Hmm.
to have a worse game eventually. He was going to throw those interceptions eventually because I think we all saw that he was throwing turnover worthy passes a lot of the time. He was getting lucky. And so some negative regression was bound to come, and I think we're now seeing that come, and we're seeing it happen in these moments of the game when it kind of feels like he has to be the hero. Like I kind of feel like that's what we're seeing. I've mentioned this like on a few of my shows too. I mentioned JC and something he said about when he watched Iowa State games, and how when Purdy feels like he has to be the guy and win, like be the hero for the team, that's when you'd see bad things happen.
Right.
And so I think he benefited from things being very complimentary, which, again, we haven't seen. The run game is not helping him out, at all. So he's kind of having to be the hero at the end of these games. And I think what we're seeing now, like when you have to pass in those situations, defenses kind of know more or less what to expect. We knew that too, right? That defenses were going to adjust to what Brock Purdy, brings to the table. And if it's not complimentary football, then again, like defense is going to know what to expect at that moment in the game. So I think you're kind of seeing that. I think you're also seeing him just make kind of like dumb mistakes, like the one this past weekend where he scrambled out to the right, and he had George Kittle, and he could have just stepped out of bounds and he would have had a
Hmm.
play after that. Like I don't know, lived to see
Yeah.
another down, but he tried to get it over the defender. The defender got it. He made a great grab on that one. Right, that was a great play from him too. But, I think it being a mixture of those two things, I think, of course, the dumb mistakes could be corrected. Like, that's just him making a mental error and saying, like, oh, next time I probably shouldn't shouldn't
Mhm.
make that throw in that situation. Like we don't even need it. So, I Brock Purdy was always going to be he was always this season going to be a young quarterback who's still learning, who still has less than a full season under his belt, and eventually he was going to take some of those lumps, right? He's going to learn on the fly. I do think that Brock, despite us seeing like all these interceptions these last few games, I do think that Brock's like a pretty quick learner. So like those dumb mistakes, I don't think we'll see those. We might like if the run game continues to struggle and again like he feels like he needs to be the hero at the end of the game, like we might see more interceptions there, but I'm not too worried about it. I think he's going to round out into, a better quarterback at the end of all this, with less mistakes. If the 49ers were able to make Jimmy Garoppolo a quarterback who can throw less interceptions, if they see it becoming a problem for Brock Purdy, I think they have some guardrails in place to keep him from, ruining the game, right? If they felt like it became a problem. I don't even think they're there yet, right? But so I'm not too worried about Brock overall and his like overall outlook. He could still very well be a franchise guy. Just give him a chance to like, improve through these little bumps and bruises.
Yeah, shout out to Jimmy Garoppolo. It's his birthday today, so and then he lost his job yesterday, so that's crazy. And did you see the Raiders page? Like they even put out a happy birthday to
Yeah,
Jimmy Garoppolo
man. What are
thing
they
today.
doing?
Like man,
What are
like
they
I'm in
doing,
Vegas, so
man?
it's like a crazy
I would
week
have
here in
just
Vegas.
pretended like I missed it. I forgot it on the calendar. That's what they should have done. But
And the comments under that post, like, oh my goodness.
oh
Um,
man.
one more thing before we get out of here, and it kind of has to do with Purdy as well, but the first 5 games, we talked about they're scoring over 30 points. Obviously, that means they're leading for most of the game, right? We never really knew like how's Purdy going to be when he has to play from behind, when the team
Yeah,
gets
yeah.
down a couple touchdowns, is he going to be able to put the team on his back and bring the team back? And the last 3 weeks, there's been times when he's had to do that. And I mean, yeah, the one time, he brought the team down, they could have won the game. Obviously, we know Moody missed a kick. Um, obviously that's a little issue there too, but I mean, I think of it as like you should have never been in that position for it had to come down to Moody, missing the kick at the last freaking
Mhm.
seconds of the game, because the offense was stinking it up in the entire game. But kind of like, do you I guess, like, have you lost any faith, or, like, are you feeling a certain way now when the 49ers do get down, like that you're worried, okay, we don't have the team or we don't have the quarterback that's able to lead this team to come back from this? Do you think that's something like over time, sit the situation, it's luck, Purdy can get better at that. Like, how do you look at that situation?
I mean, still a small sample size, but it's the only sample size we have, right? Of Brock Purdy like playing in these adverse situations. Which yeah, was the one thing we were still like all very much
Mm-hmm.
wondering about him. And so based on the sample size, like no, like you're not gonna feel great if if the team is down 7-3, whatever it may be in the fourth quarter or whatever, and he has to, bring the team back. But at the same time, like I do still have the optimism. Like I have the optimism that at any point he can turn it around. Like I felt good watching the Bengals game that okay, like I think that he can do it still.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I don't know how long it would take me to necessarily feel like the opposite, but as of right now, like I'm still optimistic, and I do want to see if things improve with Trent there, with
Yeah.
Debo there. When you have like your full amount of guys, when your offensive line is like giving you time, all these different things. Um, so yeah, I do think he'll make some improvements in that area. Um, I, of course, don't want to see the team get into that
Right.
position to begin with. but I'm gonna give Purdy the benefit of the doubt still, I think, for now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I know, seeing, man, there's been a lot of people that are already, calling for other quarterbacks, saying that there's going to be quarterback drama if Sam
Yes.
Darnold had to start when Purdy had a concussion, and like, oh my goodness. Like, it's been crazy. But I'm with you. Like, I think, obviously it's a small sample size, but like you said, it's the only sample size we have. But he's such a young guy still, like
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing, like, with Trey Lance, is like people were writing him off after only a handful of games. It's like you can't, like, I feel like you have to see a quarterback back play at least a couple years, to know, okay, this quarterback, I think they can make it in the NFL, or no, they just don't have what it takes, And from all accounts, it's been a rough, 3 games, but it's been a rough 3 games for pretty much every football player on the field, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, CMC is still scoring touchdowns, but yet his running game hasn't been great, like, so either he can get better, and he's like our star pupil, right? Like,
Exactly.
um, so, I'm not putting, these 3 losses on Brock Purdy at all whatsoever. I'm not ready to write off the kid. Like, I think he's been great, so far. He's been a lot better than what we've had the last how many ever years that I can remember, right? Like, I'm not, like, I still have, hope that this team can win the Super Bowl this season. I think that they're going to go far. Yeah, there's teams obviously like the Eagles, like, I don't think the Jags next week's going to be an easy, feat by any means.
Right.
So there's still, it's gonna take, this team really getting their asses together and, getting wins up there, because you lost games that you were supposed to win. And now you have to win the games that maybe you had the little cushion to lose, maybe that Eagles game. Okay, some people might have had that chalked up that we would have lost that game. Well, now you need to win those games, like, you shouldn't have been losing to the Vikings. You shouldn't have been losing to the Browns, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, so I really hope this bye week, the players that we can get back from injury, is going to help a lot. Um, they they just do some self evaluation, whatever. Some go put sage around the 49ers locker rooms, like, do something. Freaking do some Indian dances out on the field. Like, I don't care what you got to do. Freaking put it all together and make it work for the rest of the season, because what we saw these last 3 weeks isn't acceptable moving forward.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I agree.
Next week, we don't know if Steph will be here. Hopefully, she can tell the airport to hold her flight so she can do the show with us. So next week, starting our show at 3 Pacific time next Thursday, we do have a Jags content creator coming on. So we'll talk to her about getting ready to play the Jags that week. And then for the following, the half an hour after that, we have Coach Desi coming on. Some of you might know her from, she does a show with Eric Crocker. They have a show together every week. She also has her own show, Girlfriends in Football. So she'll be coming on. She does work in the medical field as well. So we'll get to talk to her about, the concussions with Brock, obviously him hitting his head a second time, the game following, some of these injuries we've had on the team and whatnot. So next week we have a great show planned for you guys. As it'll be time to get ready for those Jags. So yeah, this week we just wanted to give you guys something. We know it's been a couple weeks since we've been here. That's no fault of Steph's. I take all the blame. And so yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of your bye week. This weekend, go touch some grass, go hang out with your families, watch the other teams. I hope they all lose. Every team that's playing, I hope they lose. Steph, I know you have nothing else for the rest of the week, right? You're done.
Yeah.
You're taking a bye week.
I'm taking a bye weekend at least. I might have a show on Monday with Ashley Ariana, but I'll keep you guys posted as always. Just make sure you have notifications on for my channel at Steph 49K 49 Carats podcast, and you'll know when I go live next. So stay tuned.
There you have it. I am as well off for the rest of the weekend. I will be back Tuesday for that show. And until then, I hope everybody has a great week, great weekend. Be safe out there. Make sure you subscribe to both channels, 49 Faithfully and 49K Podcast on YouTube. And much love, fam. We'll see you guys next week. We're out of here.
Peace.